Greetings, spirit beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. Use legal measures only to combat the virus and cooperate with government officials, first responders, and healthcare workers to make the coronavirus a thing of the past and create a perfect society ASAP. Use common sense, logic, and help your fellow humans if necessary, also to lower the risk of being vaccinated mandatorily ourselves and to end the pandemic as soon as possible. The objective of my videos is not to slander people nor to incite or trigger people, but to do the opposite, exposing it when people are wrongly accused, and to create universal peace, world peace, or just peace on earth. People are innocent till proven guilty in the court of law. One who knows of evidence must testify not to convict anyone without a fair trial. That was the legal disclaimer, and then I have a shorter medical disclaimer. The content of this video is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and always get proper treatment for serious medical conditions. Okay, I'm Ulrich B.C. Hoffman, your host for this program, and today's video title is Starlink equals Skynet, ? Satellite constellation will operate in the high frequency 5G bands above 24 gigahertz. So I pop out the chats, and then I will first take a look at the Wikipedia article. So the idea is comparing Skynet and Starlink. SpaceX, Elon Musk, and I need this link, so I will copy that from here. Just a second. Then the speech engine might read it. Let's just restart it then, because I've started open broadcaster software. That's always the thing. And then I can paste it in this overview like so. Okay, so now it should load, and then we can start. First, we can read this. Starlink is a satellite constellation being constructed by American company SpaceX to provide satellite internet access. Well, and the question is, of course, don't we have that yet? And we know that cancer cell phone radiation is extremely damaging to human health, to the human body, and I've covered the scientific documents in my previous broadcast. Perhaps I still have some links open in the other browser. This one. Effects of microwave exposure on the hamster immune system, for example. So I've covered that WHO article in my previous broadcast. Chronic microwave radiation at 5 milliwatt per square centimeter leads to suppression of peripheral T lymphocyte numbers. Source: biological effects of microwaves and mobile telephony, WHO.int, paper 03, nageswari.pdf, covered in my previous broadcasts, in which I answer questions of Dutch citizens about 5G and other things going on lately, or questions that they asked in reply to my videos. So I plan to first study Starlink basically, and then we can take a look at Skynet as well. Skynet is a fictional artificial neural network based conscious group mind and artificial general superintelligence system that serves as an antagonist in the Terminator franchise, created by Cyberdyne Systems. Skynet is also a satellite family of military communications satellites now operated by Airbus Defence and Space on behalf of the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defence, blah blah. And Elon Musk, Elon Reeve Musk, that's related to Christopher Reeve somehow, FRS, don't know what that stands for, Fellowship of the Royal Society is an award granted by the judges of the Royal Society of London to individuals who have made a, quote, substantial contribution to the improvement of natural knowledge, including mathematics, engineering, science, and medical sciences, etc. An engineer, industrial designer, philanthropist, and technology entrepreneur. He is a citizen of South Africa, the United States, where he has lived most of his life, and currently resides in Canada. He is the founder, CEO, and chief engineer designer of SpaceX, early investor, CEO, and product architect of Tesla Inc., founder of the Boring Company, co-founder of Neuralink, and co-founder and initial co-chairman of OpenAI. Is an independent research organization consisting of the for-profit corporation OpenAI LP and its parent organization non-profit OpenAI Inc. The corporation conducts research in the field of artificial intelligence with the stated aim to promote and develop friendly AI. Makes me think of the population reduction NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. And then we can hop to other subjects. I've selected some other articles. This is how Elon Musk can fix the damage his Starlink satellites are causing to astronomy. On Forbes.com, Fox.com, the night sky is increasingly dystopian. SpaceX's satellites are messing up astronomers' observations. It's just the beginning. Starlink, Artemis 5G, Skynet. We can take a look at this as well. It also shows the 60 gigahertz band. So 98% of the 60 gigahertz radiation is absorbed by oxygen O2, according to this graph. And I found it on rfglobalnet.com as well. Don't know the original source, or I don't remember it anyway. But that's easy to find out usually. State of the Nation, 5G in the timeline of the coronavirus news. stateofthenation.co. And I don't know if I'm gonna read any of this. It's just among the first links that I found when searching on Starlink. Satellites, 5G radiation plus, quote, population reduction, unquote. And Skeptics, internationalskeptics.com. A YouTube playlist with both mainstream and conspiracy videos. 5G must be stopped. But this thread isn't meant to argue about why or if it should be stopped. We could take a look at that as well. There will be chips in coronavirus vaccines. harppetition.blogspot.com. Well, I've read that HARP is a fake facility open every 6 years to the public, and they have a FIPA array, frequency independent phased array antennas that can produce more terawatts than HARP, and it's camouflaged, and it's in Poker Flat, not Gacona, Alaska. Effects of introduction 5G in countries of the Earth, spring 2020. The main purpose of 5G is control of behavior of chipped people, total control of humanity with help of 5G network and satellites. Well, can't it be to reduce the global population? When we look at all the damaging effects of cancer cell phone radiation. More about that later. First, let's read the Starlink wiki article.
Starlink is a satellite constellation being constructed by American company SpaceX 1-2 to provide satellite internet access. 3-4. The constellation will consist of thousands of mass-produced small satellites in low Earth orbit, LEO, working in combination with ground transceivers. SpaceX also plans to sell some of the satellites for military, 5, scientific, or exploratory purposes. 6. Concerns have been raised about the long-term danger of space debris resulting from placing thousands of satellites in orbits above 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles 7, and a possible impact on astronomy. 8. Although SpaceX is reportedly attempting to solve the latter issue, on Starlink 2, one of the satellites has an experimental coating to make it less reflective, and thus impact ground-based astronomical observations less. 9. The total cost of the decade-long project to design, build, and deploy the constellation was estimated by SpaceX in May 2018 to be about $10 billion.
So basically I'm less worried about the impact on astronomy than I am about the health hazard. But these two other links are better. I covered them in my previous broadcast, see if I can find them fast. Effects of microwave, no, that's not the one. This one I think may be good. ScienceDirect. Cancer Wi-Fi is an important threat to human health. 7 effects have each been repeatedly reported following Wi-Fi and other EMF exposures. So that's the same cancer cell phone radiation, same microwave radiation. And that's easy to measure with a microwave meter, but now they are going to use higher frequency bands, and many of these meters measure up to 2.5, 2.6 gigahertz, and you'd need one up to 100 gigahertz if you want to measure all the 5G radiation. Where can I find it fast? 5G NR, new radio, uses 2 frequency ranges. So the NR stands for new radio. The new radio access technology, RAT, developed by 3GPP for the 5G 5th generation mobile network. Frequency range 1, FR1, including sub-6 GHz frequency bands, and frequency range 2, FR2, including frequency bands in the millimeter wave range 24 to 100 GHz. So then what about 6 to 24 GHz? Perhaps they already have too much other stuff in these bands, in that spectrum. Anyway, that's what they write. 7 effects have each been repeatedly reported following Wi-Fi and other EMF exposures. Established Wi-Fi or cancer Wi-Fi effects include apoptosis, oxidative stress, and testis-sperm dysfunction. In some studies, effects lowered by antioxidants, sperm testicular damage, male infertility, neuropsychiatric changes, etc., cellular DNA damage, and a lot of other horrible impacts, health effects, abnormal postnatal development, microRNA expression, brain, disrupts development of teeth, cardiac changes. So that was shown in multiple scientific studies that you can find here in this article. And that all includes the cancer cell phone radiation, usually 2.4 gigahertz band, but there is also a 5 gigahertz band reserved for possible cancer Wi-Fi use. Anyway, these effects are very similar because it's the same type of radiation. And we can also see that in the other study that we have here, 5G wireless. This is also an overview of several studies. We'll have to wait till it loads. They can block it forever with wireless energy, the radiant energy of Nikola Tesla, the scalar patterns that I've covered in a separate broadcast. And they should use the scalar technology, also because it's faster. Some types of scalar waves travel faster than the speed of light, and it's just Nikola Tesla's radiant energy, and the scientists agree that that exists. Professor Maal also covered it. So everything is a natural frequency, called the Eigenfrequenz in German and in Dutch. Eigenfrequentie, taught in physics also in school, so this is a scientifically proven fact that things have a natural frequency, including bridges. Thinking about what I wanted to say, really. So basically, it's not just faster, but they can use healing frequencies that have a curing effect on humanity rather than deadly frequencies. And Dr. Rife also has done a lot of work, also with microscopes, studying that Eigenfrequenz, the mortal oscillatory rate frequency. Dr. Rife is famous for his morph frequencies, basically. And you can also see videos on YouTube of organisms disintegrating when exposed to their morph frequency, which might be half of the natural frequency, I don't know for sure. But there are also resonant frequencies. Everything has its own frequency, everything is energy. So the air consists out of molecules, we consist out of molecules. And the valence electrons are affected by the 60 gigahertz radiation because that's 98% absorbed by oxygen, while 2.4 gigahertz is mainly absorbed by water molecules. So that's why it can be used to cook things, basically. And macrobiotics and others advise people not to do that because it plastifies food, and not to cook on electrical stoves, only on gas, on natural fire, because of the electromagnetic fields. And because everything is energy, it starts making sense now. To me anyway, 2:21 at night, so it is kind of a late night broadcast. Anyway, this overview, 5G wireless communication and health effects, a pragmatic review based on available studies regarding 6 to 100 gigahertz, also shows more scientific information about it. And I've covered it in a separate broadcast. And it makes clear that it's not about the thermal effects, but that there are many other effects a lot more threatening to humanity as a whole than the thermal effects. But people that would want to reduce the global population would want these effects, and they'd see them as a good thing, not a bad thing. Some people think that when they roll out 5G, that will destroy most of the organisms on the planet, and it may be their main population reduction method to reduce the global population to 500 million. Some say 100 million is sustainable, 500 million is not. But that's that legendary number we find on what can be considered illegal Georgia Guidestones, anonymously donated under the pseudonym of Robert Christian. And also the book quotes that I've covered in the 50 shocking population reduction quotes video make clear that some people think a population reduction to 500 million is a must. Of course, it's nonsense to increase their power. They already have more money than they can ever spend. So they want to be able to control everybody remotely, like remotely controlled slaves, in theory, which I add because I'm a conspiracy factist. But so many people have talked about this, and I've covered another video recently about a man who thought that it would be horrible and perhaps even the end of life as we know it. So this is a better overview for people who are more interested in 5G frequencies and their effects. And mind you, this is not mainstream media BS, this is scientific data. And therefore to be taken more seriously than what we read in the mainstream media. Another good source is the book Magnetobiology Underlying Physical Problems. And more information about all this in my previous broadcasts. But we are reading about Starlink. Well, hello, Officer Starlink. Johns Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins, The Silence of the Lambs, etc. Officer Starlink. That's what it made me think of also, but okay. Now we're gonna compare it not to Silence of the Lambs, but to the Terminator movie Skynet. So Starlink is a satellite constellation being constructed by American company SpaceX. The Batman, Joker, Project X, etc. But this is probably not the same. Perhaps he did refer to that, but perhaps it's just a time-traveling AI that's trying to warn humanity via the scriptwriter, because it controls the human mind with synthetic telepathy since 1974, Malech patent, apparatus to remotely monitor and alter brainwaves, and the patent is not provided unless it's a working device, so we can be really sure of this. It's possible it controls the minds of scriptwriters, book writers, like Ingersoll Lockwood, for example, who wrote Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey in 1893. And I covered that in previous broadcasts, perhaps also the Torah, Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth, which you could argue is a mistranslation, but okay. Some people think that could happen if it would be an antibody-dependent virus, so there is no cure, and they'll find that out when it has mutated perhaps, but that's totally theoretical, worst case scenario, and nobody can prove it or disprove it for as far as I know. And if you can, please Skype Prologic 999, then we can do a broadcast or leave a comment or write something in the chat. I'll be taking a look at that regularly to see if there are any people writing anything interesting. For now, no comments yet. Okay, in previous chats, well, I give people a wrench basically if they have some interesting comment, and then the idea is not to censor anybody but only post links to other websites you think have interesting data, interesting information about this, to first learn about it, because I basically found out about this today. Perhaps I've heard about it earlier, but it didn't get through to me basically, and then I can make a broadcast about it. So let's continue reading.
10. Product development began in 2015, with the first 2 prototype test flight satellites launched in February 2018. A second set of test satellites and the first large deployment of a piece of the constellation occurred on May 24, 2019 UTC, when the first 60 operational satellites were launched. 111, the SpaceX Satellite Development Facility in Redmond, Washington, houses the Starlink research, development, manufacturing, and on-orbit control operations. As of April 2020, with 358 satellites of the constellation in orbit. 12, SpaceX is targeting service in the northern US and Canada by late 2020. SpaceX is launching 60 satellites at a time, aiming to deploy more than 1,500 of the quarter-ton spacecraft to provide near global service by late 2021 or 2022. 13, however, these are only internal projections and not set dates. Contents 1 History 1.1 2015 to 2017 1.2 2018 to 2019 1.3 2020 to 2021 2 Launches 2.1 List of launches 3 Services 3.1 Global Broadband Internet 3.2 Use Beyond Earth 4 Technology 4.1 Constellation Design and Status 4.2 Satellite Hardware 4.3 User Terminals 4.4 Satellite Revisions 5 Competition and Market Effects 6 Criticism 7 See also 8 Nodes 9 References 10 External links.
Whoa! So then I'm reading that as of April 2020, with 358 satellites of the constellation in orbit. 358 satellites of the constellation in orbit. SpaceX is targeting service in the northern US and Canada. Well, so I've shown in my previous broadcast that it does affect, and also in this broadcast, the WHO.int article, that it affects the immune system, the T lymphocytes, and secondly that everything has a natural frequency, so they cannot conclude that there cannot be any correlation between 5G and the virus SARS-CoV-2 without any scientific data, without mentioning that eigenfrequency, natural frequency, and the fact that it affects people's immune system. And that's a scientific fact, so I'm not going to pretend that it's okay and cancer cell phone radiation is good for the earth, blah blah. It's nonsense. The earth is already dead, only the organisms upon and within it are alive. It's misdirection to reduce the global population, and people that want to get rid of us all are our enemy, unless we can reprogram them to do the right thing and create a perfect society rather than a society of a group of people that call themselves the Society of the Perfect, which these two don't rule each other out, but you know what I mean. So USA won with 598,737 cases. So that's so much more than, for example, China with 82,249 cases. China is now 2467, number 7 in the top 10. And the Netherlands is number 11. We can also look at the number of new deaths. Probably USA is on top. with 1,130 new deaths and total deaths. Again, USA 24,770. So how can this incredible difference in number of cases with China 598,000 versus 82,000? How can that be when China has 1.4 billion people? They also have people packed close together in Hong Kong and other skyscraper areas, etc. So what is the main big difference here? Could it be SpaceX? Mr. Fullerton telling us that it's not coming from the sky or whatever. It's a shill thing or whatever. I have my doubts. But he does explain the van der Waal thing, or whatever it was, valence electrons or whatever. I mean, okay. And then I was checking this, and I found a better map. Basically, I was checking. Well, we have some maps basically. One shows the 5G cities in Europe. And in Italy they have 6, in France 5, in Spain, and in Greece and Poland also 4, and in Spain 3, United Kingdom 2, etc. As you can see. So then you can compare that to the number of cases. Also, of course, it doesn't prove anything, they would argue. Zoom in a little bit. So some people are claiming that the countries with most cases, with the biggest red dots, have most 5G basically. And in countries without, well, who knows if there are countries without 5G. It's pretty hard to find a good overview. Don't know if there's a global overview. Verizon 5G cities, December 23rd, 2019. And then we can browse back to the other thing again. To the US. I've also got dual nationality, Dutch and American, because my father worked in the US for a pretty long time. So if there is a beach without 5G, then perhaps I could move there. And perhaps I could do stuff to help create a perfect society in which we all live happily eternally, possible because everything is energy. Anyway, we can compare this map. Can zoom out with the wheel, make it about the same size. Well, we can notice a pattern here basically, and that's pretty similar to what we see here. And I'm pretty sure they also have 5G in San Francisco. You can check that out online. So yeah, we see this pattern here with most of the 5G antennas in the east coast, etc. East of the US, so it's almost like it's split in half. East coast totally red, COVID-19, and the west basically seems to have a lot less cases. And we also see that there's more 5G according to this map, but there are others, of course. This one shows 5G in China, USA, and UK. This shows a sort of similar pattern, almost the same, probably. And then there's this one, the T-Mobile nationwide 5G. And then in pink we see the 5G coverage, so everything that's pink is 5G. But there are other providers also, so it's not just T-Mobile and Verizon. but I've seen at least 2 others, and that makes it more difficult to find a map that has all these antennas on it. I've covered it more in depth in my previous broadcast. So I think that's relevant when it concerns billions of lives, and this is a global thing. People won't be able to hide from it anywhere. I'm electrosensitive, and it goes hand in hand with chemical sensitivity, according to Dr. Cyril Smith. And of course, he's right about it, and people can read more about it online. So that means chemicals must be avoided because they have a synergistic effect with cancer-causing electromagnetic radiation. So that includes avoiding chemicals cancer-causing prescription drugs, also called generic drugs. So first, tapping into the world of natural cures, unless there is no other or better treatment than a chemical whose cancer risk increasing drug could be used, because it is cancer risk increasing. Overall, we can say it's cancer causing because millions of people will get cancer from it if billions of people would use it. And some people are thinking about globally mandatory vaccination. And Bill and Melinda Gates are quite famous. Bill Gates with his speeches in which he advocates population reduction with 10 to 15% of the global population, and that's still over 1 billion people, though we're not even at 1/5 of a million coronavirus deaths, and there are way more HIV deaths in 2020 alone than coronavirus deaths in total, as you can see on worldometers.info. So some people are thinking that the damages of the measures they are taking, the crisis they're generating, it will kill a lot more people, and also the killer vaccine that may be the main population reduction method. Or, now we see this, 5G of course, Starlink. How many satellites in total? Perhaps I first should have watched other people's videos about it, but this is my reaction to it basically. So what was the other thing I wanted to read? We have the history, etc., list of launches. 358 satellites already in orbit. Oh yeah, we could see that on that picture. Let's show that again. That's also found in the wiki article. Starlink initial phase, 1,584 satellites into 72 orbital planes of 22 satellites each. And I've read that they will operate, let's search on gigahertz for example. The SpaceX non-geostationary orbit communications satellite constellation will operate in the high frequency bands above 24 gigahertz. Quote, where steerable Earth station, etc. The Ka band, range 26.5 to 40 gigahertz. So they'd have to produce a tremendous amount of energy, these satellites, to beam that much radiation down to Earth continuously. And some people think that everything will die because of it, and that's more important than possible satellites, meteors crashing into our planet, because we can't see them. Unless that meteor is so big that it wipes us all out. But even if it would be, what could we do if there would be one coming in our direction? So perhaps it's better to roll this out. it makes a safety net, then it crashes into the satellites, and then we get the chain reaction, and then we're satellite free again. So I'm just kidding, of course. I think these two reasons must be looked into thoroughly, and an investigation by the government must be done into that, and also the global organizations, and perhaps there are millions of people working on this, trying to prevent this from happening to humanity and the species on our planet. And if not, I hope that we can unite via the internet, share the most important data, and also come up with ways to prevent this from happening. And also come up with alternatives like Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, radiant energy, looking at what the best frequency bands would be for life on our planet, to turn it into a world to come, Olam Haba, paradise on earth, non-fictional utopia, instead of a negative dystopian word that I cannot use on YouTube. Negative dystopian hellhole in which everybody is tortured and suffering continuously except for a handful of adrenochrome slurping elite. And here it suggests first orbital shell, so that's only the first orbital shell, and how many of these cancer shells are there really? So as you can hear, I'm not positive about it, because I know the damaging qualities of the cancer cell from radiation. I've also been treated with chemotherapy just about a decade ago, 10 years ago, and that's not really a fun process either, except for nice nurses. And one of the problems is that if I'd end up in a hospital now, I'd probably die because I'm chemically and electrosensitive. So I bought a new €250 hoodie, but I'm still hearing a loud ringing in the head, and I'm thinking that they do it with scalar weapons. They were also hurting my knee so that I cannot even sit in front of my PC anymore. And the goal is to isolate me from the internet to prevent me from influencing this timeline. In theory. Also because I attempted to press charges against these people that advocated population reduction, some to 500 million, some to 100 million, etc. And the book quotes prove this beyond any reasonable doubt, so I thought, well, then the police has to allow me to press charges in these matters. And now there are billions of lives at risk, including these police officers themselves. So like I said in my previous broadcast, I'm not going to assume that there is a correlation between 5G and the virus without evidence, and I'm not going to assume that there is none. And what was the other thing? I took off my hoodie, perhaps that's the problem. But I said it in my previous broadcast, so check that if you want to hear the other half. I should be able to record it. But perhaps they can block memory selectively, so then I wonder, should I move on to the next subject? I don't want to steal anybody's time, which is another technique. So synthetic telepathy is the main technique they're using. No, it's in my previous broadcast, so check it out later after this one. So that's interesting to know. And the other thing I want to read is criticism, covered by Wikipedia.org, the CIA Vatican edited encyclopedia according to agency France Presse. And other news agencies also have reported it because they keep a log of who edited the articles.
Criticism. A large number of planned satellites has been met with criticism from the astronomical community because of concerns for light pollution. 117, 118, 119. Astronomers claim that the number of visible satellites will outnumber visible stars and that their brightness in both optical and radio wavelengths will severely impact scientific observations. Because the Starlink satellites can autonomously change their orbits, observations cannot be scheduled to avoid them. The International Astronomical Union, IA, and National Radio Astronomy Observatory, NRO, have released official statements expressing concern on the matter. 120. SpaceX representatives and Musk have claimed that the satellites will have minimal impact. 121. Many professional astronomers have disputed these claims based on initial observation of the Starlink V0.9 satellites on the first launch, shortly after their deployment from the launch vehicle. 122, 123, 124, 125. In later statements on Twitter, Musk stated that SpaceX will work on reducing the albedo of the satellites and will provide on-demand orientation adjustments for astronomical experiments, if necessary. 126, 127. To date, only one Starlink satellite, numbered 1130 DarkSat, has experimental coding to reduce its albedo. However, the reduction in magnitude is very subtle with only 0.8 mag reduction, and this is not sufficient for astronomers. 128, 129. SpaceX has mitigated concerns about the long-term danger of space junk resulting from placing thousands of satellites in orbit in part by lowering the planned orbit of the satellites. Failed satellites are expected to deorbit within a few years. 7, 130, 131. However, the risk of collision is not negligible, and despite Elon Musk's willingness to tweak the orientation of a satellite on demand, SpaceX did not move a satellite that came within a 1 in 1,000 collision probability with the European one, 10 times higher than ESA's threshold for avoidance maneuvers.
Well, then we can move on to Skynet.
Skynet is a fictional artificial neural network-based conscious group mind and artificial general superintelligence system that serves as an antagonist in the Terminator franchise. In the first film, it is stated that Skynet was created by Cyberdyne Systems for SAC-NORAD. When Skynet gained self-awareness, humans tried to deactivate it, prompting it to retaliate with a nuclear attack, an event known as Judgment Day. John Connor forms a human resistance against Skynet's machines in the future, which include Terminators, and ultimately leads the resistance to victory. Throughout the film series, Skynet sends various Terminator machines back in time to try to kill Connor to ensure Skynet's victory. The system is rarely depicted visually in any of the Terminator media, since it is an artificial intelligence system. In the 2009 film Terminator Salvation, Skynet made its first on-screen appearance on a monitor primarily portrayed by English actress Helena Bonham Carter and other actors. Its physical manifestation is played by English actor Matt Smith in the 2015 film Terminator Genesis. In addition, actors Ian Etheridge, Nolan Gross and Seth Meriwether portrayed holographic variations of Skynet with Smith. In Terminator, Dark Fate, 2019, Skynet has been erased from existence after the events of Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, and another Legion, has taken its place. In response, Daniela Ramos forms the Human Resistance Against Legion, which prompts Legion to attempt to eliminate her from the past as Skynet tried with Connor.
So in the movie we also see the chip. You can also buy the chip. Basically it's an artifact, fake chip. Let's see if I can find that thing. Okay. So I called it Bloody 5G. So then I think we're ready to read some more critical material. Perhaps there are also YouTube videos about it. Perhaps it's more entertaining than reading these articles for us all. Or is there a good one? There are some maybe interesting. Well, I think they don't need chips to control us. They have synthetic telepathy. Our brainwave is electromagnetic. They use scalar waves. It's not microwave harassment, but scalar wave harassment. And they have tortured my teeth out of my mouth and my mother to death with this technology. With the scalar technology, they can generate 60 gigahertz, they can generate 95 gigahertz active denial system, and pulsed energy projectile, which is supposedly a non-lethal weapon, but they can also use that in a lethal manner. And of course they can extort judges with this, so a fair trial is impossible. And perhaps there are people that are trying to prevent the rollout of the satellites, etc., like in the movie. But is it proven that Skynet is Starlink? I think not. That the future is not set, there is no fate, but what we make for ourselves. That may be correct. And it may also be correct that nobody can prevent the rollout. It's already rolled out in many countries, and we can see most COVID-19 deaths in the US. So perhaps it has something to do with the natural frequency, and certainly it has something to do with the T lymphocytes, T-cell lymphocytes. I could check that again. Alright, it's right here. We can open that paper so people can see it for themselves. I think I have to push control and click. or just copy the link. Ah, it's opening, okay. So here you can see the document. It's really on the who.int website. Chronic microwave radiation at 5 milliwatt per square centimeter leads to suppression of peripheral T lymphocyte numbers. So then it doesn't matter anymore that there is no concomitant functional impairment of these cells as evidenced by functional assays in both the groups. Suppression of peripheral T lymphocyte numbers. Okay. And of course WHO, according to many sources, is in on the population reduction agenda 21, 2030. And then there was Event 201 and these Bill Gates quotes, etc. Lots of links right here. I can read some parts of this if it's selectable. This is on international Skeptics.com.
How does 5G work? 5G stands for fifth generation. Previous generations of cell service work from towers that provide coverage of about 10 miles, video link, up to 22-45 miles across land. 5G needs line of sight with its range of 300 meters, or less than 1,000 feet between relay antennae. These will be installed in a variety of setups, including devices on street lamps, utility poles, corners of buildings, as seen here in NYC, and small cell towers on poles erected where no such configuration is possible. The Wi-Fi boxes will need to be installed inside also, since the millimeter waves don't travel through buildings.
So this is really the worst idea, the worst plan I've ever seen. Let's read some more on this page.
A common mistake is saying 5G means 5 GHz. Numerous frequencies are being used for 5G. There is low, mid, and high band, which engineer Paul Wipikowski divides into two categories, low being less than 7 GHz, and high, which is 24 to 71 GHz. See a screenshot from his slide at That amounts to more than 700 million devices installed around the planet. Consider insect and bird population reduction, exacerbated by the required tree cutting. Misinformation unfortunately taints truth about the tree cutting when conspiracy theorists point to the wrong examples. See https://www.metabunk.org/debunk.talgm.t10506/ There are many relevant examples of tree cutting. If you speak Italian, see the video 5G, The Massacre of Trees, linked in the luogocommune.net article https://www.luogocommune.net/lc/23n. Edegli alber. Grain of salt, s. Additionally, UK planning documents about 5G infrastructure specifically address the issue. The signal doesn't go into buildings, except somewhat through windows, which is why the Wi-Fi units from Samsung are sometimes stuck there.
Well, I think this is not a very interesting article. I think there's much better data available. So I don't know if any of these links are any good. 5gspaceappeal.org and moveon.org is controlled opposition, fake resistance to round up real resistance. An emergency appeal to the world's governments by scientists, doctors, environmental organizations and others. And anything I say, you can check with Google, of course. Read the appeal. International appeal: stop 5G on Earth and in space.
International appeal: stop 5G on Earth and in space. There are 237,302 signatories from 209 nations and territories as of April 15, 2020 to the UN, WHO, EU, Council of Europe and satellites. 5G will massively increase exposure to radio.
They do these tinfoil head, in reality an aluminum foil head, shields against cancer cell phone radiation. And if you don't believe it, measure it with a microwave meter that measures in microwatt per square meter, and the amount of radiation in your house should be kept below 0.1 microwatt per square meter, according to the building biologists that have studied for that. Not to sell stuff and market stuff and push stuff to reduce the global population. And the government's job is still to protect and serve the citizens, so perhaps they should listen to the building biologists for a change, because this affects human biology. So let's start from the top. I know they are taking my modem because they've done it before, and afterwards I wasn't able to Google anymore or do anything else. So it's not done by YouTube, but there are attacks on my modem. Perhaps of population reduction NGOs and the like, non-governmental organizations that may have hired hackers, etc.
To the UN, WHO, EU, Council of Europe and governments of all nations, we the undersigned scientists, doctors, environmental organizations and citizens from, countries, urgently call for a halt to the deployment of the 5G, fifth generation, wireless network, including 5G from space satellites. 5G will massively increase exposure to radio frequency, RF, radiation on top of the 2G, 3G and 4G networks for telecommunications already in place. RF radiation has been proven harmful for humans and the environment. The deployment of 5G constitutes an experiment on humanity and the environment that is defined as a crime under international law. Executive summary: telecommunications companies worldwide, with the support of governments, are poised within the next 2 years to roll out the fifth generation wireless network, 5G. This is set to deliver what is acknowledged to be unprecedented societal change on a global scale. We will have smart homes, smart businesses, smart highways, smart cities and self-driving cars. Virtually everything we own and buy, from refrigerators and washing machines to milk cartons, hairbrushes and infants' diapers, will contain antennas and microchips and will be connected wirelessly to the Internet. Every person on Earth will have instant access to super high-speed, low-latency wireless communications from any point on the planet, even in rainforests, mid-ocean and the Antarctic. What is not widely acknowledged is that this will also result in unprecedented environmental change on a global scale.
So why do they have to use the retarded and retarding cancer cell phone radiation, microwave radiation? And can't they use proper scalar wave radiant energy of Nikola Tesla? Some scalar waves, some types of scalar waves travel faster than the speed of light, so then it would make sense if their goal is having a faster network, etc. So there are limitations to this as well, and we must conclude that they do it deliberately to reduce the global population, possibly to 500 or 100 million, since the effects of microwave exposure have been proven in thousands of peer-reviewed scientific documents, including the frequencies that they are talking about and are using and are planning to use on a massive scale. So it's criminal to roll this out, and we see the protests around the world despite the lockdown, etc. There have been protests against 5G before the lockdown in Amsterdam and other places, and I also protested against Cancer UMTS when that was rolled out. StopUMTS.nl has more information, including scientific studies.
The planned density of radio frequency transmitters is impossible to envisage. In addition to millions of new 5G base stations on Earth and 20,000 new satellites in space, 200 billion transmitting objects, according to estimates, will be part of the Internet of Things by 2020, and 1 trillion objects a few years later. Commercial 5G at lower frequencies and slower speeds was deployed in Qatar, Finland and Estonia in mid-2018. The rollout of 5G at extremely high, millimeter wave, frequencies is planned to begin at the end of 2018. Despite widespread denial, the evidence that radio frequency, RF, radiation is harmful to life is already overwhelming. The accumulated clinical evidence of sick and injured human beings, experimental evidence of damage to DNA, cells and organ systems in a wide variety of plants and animals, and epidemiological evidence that the major diseases of modern civilization, cancer, heart disease and diabetes, are in large part caused by electromagnetic pollution, forms a literature base of well over 10,000 peer-reviewed studies. If the telecommunications industry's plans for 5G come to fruition, no person, no animal, no bird, no insect and no plant on Earth will be able to avoid exposure, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to levels of RF radiation that are tens to hundreds of times greater than what exists today, without any possibility of escape anywhere on the planet. These 5G plans threaten to provoke serious, irreversible effects on humans and permanent damage to all of the Earth's ecosystems. Immediate measures must be taken to protect humanity and the environment, in accordance with ethical imperatives and international agreements. 5G will result in a massive increase in inescapable, involuntary exposure to wireless radiation. Ground-based 5G, in order to transmit the enormous amounts of data required for the Internet of Things, (IoT), 5G technology, when fully deployed, will use millimeter waves, which are poorly transmitted through solid material. This will require every carrier to install base stations every 100 meters, in every urban area in the world. Unlike previous generations of wireless technology, in which a single antenna broadcasts over a wide area, 5G base stations and 5G devices will have multiple antennas arranged in phased arrays, 2, 3, that work together to emit focused, steerable, laser-like beams that track each other. Each 5G phone will contain dozens of tiny antennas, all working together to track and aim a narrowly focused beam at the nearest cell tower. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, has adopted rules for permitting the effective power of those beams to be as much as 20 watts, 10 times more powerful than the levels permitted for current phones. Each 5G base station will contain hundreds or thousands of antennas aiming multiple laser-like beams simultaneously at all cell phones and user devices in its service area. This technology is called Multiple Input Multiple Output, or MIMO. FCC rules permit the effective radiated power of a 5G base station's beams to be as much as 30,000 watts per 100 MHz of spectrum, 2, or equivalently 300,000 watts per GHz of spectrum, tens to hundreds of times more powerful than the levels permitted for current base stations. Space-based 5G. At least 5 companies are proposing to provide 5G from space from a combined 20,000 satellites in low and medium Earth orbit that will blanket.
The current IGNIRP WHO standards are insane already, and they're deadly to millions of people yearly, so they're unsafety standards, not safety standards.
The Earth with powerful, focused, steerable beams. Each satellite will emit millimeter waves with an effective radiated power of up to 5 million watts 6, from thousands of antennas arranged in a phased array. Although the energy reaching the ground from satellites will be less than that from ground-based antennas, it will irradiate areas of the Earth not reached by other transmitters and will be additional to ground-based 5G transmissions from billions of IoT objects. Even more importantly, the satellites will be located in the Earth's magnetosphere, which exerts a significant influence over the electrical properties of the atmosphere. The alteration of the Earth's electromagnetic environment may be an even greater threat to life than the radiation from ground-based antennas. See below. Harmful effects of radio frequency radiation are already proven even before 5G was proposed. Dozens of petitions and appeals, 7, by international scientists, including the Freiburger Appeal signed by over 3,000 physicians, called for a halt to the expansion of wireless technology and a moratorium on new base stations. 8. In 2015, 215 scientists from 41 countries communicated their alarm to the United Nations, UN, and World Health Organization, WHO. 9. They stated that numerous recent scientific publications have shown that EMF, electromagnetic fields, affects living organisms at levels well below most international and national guidelines. More than 10,000 peer-reviewed scientific studies demonstrate harm to human health from RF radiation. 10. 11. Effects include alteration of heart rhythm 12, altered gene expression 13, altered metabolism 14, altered stem cell development 15, cancers 16, cardiovascular disease 17, cognitive impairment 18, DNA damage 19, impacts on general well-being 20, increased free radicals 21, learning and memory deficits 22, impaired sperm function and quality 23, miscarriage 24, neurological damage 25, obesity and diabetes 26, oxidative stress 27, effects in children include autism 28, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD 29-30, and asthma 31. Damage goes well beyond the human race, as there is abundant evidence of harm to diverse plant and wildlife 32-33, and laboratory animals, including ants 34, birds 35-36, forests 37, frogs 38, fruit flies 39, honeybees 40, insects 41, mammals 42, mice 43-44, plants 45, rats 46, trees 47, negative microbiological effects 48, have also been recorded. The WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, concluded in 2011 that RF radiation of frequencies 30 kHz to 300 GHz are possibly carcinogenic to humans, Group 2B. 49. However, recent evidence, including the latest studies on cell phone use and brain cancer risks, indicate that RF radiation is proven carcinogenic to humans 50, and should now be classified as a Group 1 carcinogen along with tobacco smoke and asbestos. Most contemporary wireless signals are pulse modulated. Harm is caused by both the high-frequency carrier wave and the low-frequency pulsations. 51. The deployment of 5G satellites must be prohibited. The Earth, the ionosphere and the lower atmosphere form the global electric circuit 52, in which we live. It is well established that biological rhythms, of humans, 53-54, birds, 55, hamsters, 56, and spiders 57-58 are controlled by the Earth's natural electromagnetic environment, and that the well-being of all organisms depends on the stability of this environment, including the electrical properties of the atmosphere. 59-60-61-62, Cherry, in a groundbreaking paper, 63, explained the importance of the Schumann resonances 64, and why ionospheric disturbances can alter blood pressure and melatonin and cause cancer, reproductive, cardiac and neurological disease and death. These elements of our electromagnetic environment have already been altered by radiation from power lines. Power line harmonic radiation 65, reaches the Earth's ionosphere and magnetosphere, where it is amplified by wave-particle interactions. 66-67, in 1985, Dr. Robert O. Becker warned that power line harmonic radiation had already changed the structure of the magnetosphere, and that the continued expansion of this effect threatens the viability of all life on Earth. 68. The placement of tens of thousands of satellites directly in both the ionosphere and magnetosphere, emitting modulated signals at millions of watts and millions of frequencies, is likely to alter our electromagnetic environment beyond our ability to adapt. 69. Informal monitoring has already provided evidence indicating serious effects on humans and animals from the approximately 100 satellites that have provided 2G and 3G phone service from low orbit since 1998. Such effects cannot be understood only from consideration of the low levels of radiation on the ground. Knowledge from other relevant scientific disciplines must be taken into account, including the fields of atmospheric physics and acupuncture. 70-71-72-73, adding 20,000 5G satellites will further pollute the global electric circuit 74-75, and could alter the Schumann resonances, 76, with which all life on Earth has evolved. The effects will be universal and may be profoundly damaging. 5G is qualitatively and quantitatively different from 4G. The idea that we will tolerate dense to hundreds of times more radiation at millimeter wavelengths is based on faulty modeling of the human body as a shell filled with a homogeneous liquid. 77-78, the assumption that millimeter waves do not penetrate beyond the skin completely ignores nerves, 79, blood vessels 80-81. And other electrically conducting structures that can carry radiation-induced currents deep into the body. 82-83-84, another, potentially more serious error is that phased arrays are not ordinary antennas. When an ordinary electromagnetic field enters the body, it causes charges to move and currents to flow. But when extremely short electromagnetic pulses enter the body, something else happens. The moving charges themselves become little antennas that radiate the electromagnetic field and send it deeper into the body. These radiated waves are called Brillouin precursors. 85. They become significant when either the power or the phase of the waves changes rapidly enough. 86. 5G will probably satisfy both criteria. In addition, shallow penetration in itself poses a unique danger to eyes and to the largest organ of the body, the skin, as well as to very small creatures. Peer-reviewed studies have recently been published, predicting thermal skin burns 87, in humans from 5G radiation and resonant absorption by insects, 88, which absorb up to 100 times as much radiation at millimeter wavelengths as they do at wavelengths presently in use. Since populations of flying insects have declined by 75–80% since 1989 even in protected nature areas, 89, 5G radiation could have catastrophic effects on insect populations worldwide. A 1986 study by Gandhi warned that millimeter waves are strongly absorbed by the cornea of the eye, and that ordinary clothing, being of millimeter-size thickness, increases the absorption of energy by the skin by a resonance-type effect. 90. Russell, 2018, reviews the known effects of millimeter waves on skin, eyes, including cataracts, heart rate, immune system and DNA. 91. Regulators have deliberately excluded the scientific evidence of harm. Stakeholders thus far in the development of 5G have been industry and governments, while renowned international EMF scientists who have documented biological effects on humans, animals, insects and plants, and alarming effects on health and the environment in thousands of peer-reviewed studies have been excluded. The reason for the current inadequate safety guidelines is that conflicts of interest of standard-setting bodies due to their relationships with telecommunications or electric companies undermine the impartiality that should govern the regulation of public exposure standards for non-ionizing radiation. 92. Professor Emeritus Martin L. Paul lays out the conflicts of interest in detail, and the lists of important studies that have been excluded, in his literature review. 93. The thermal hypothesis is obsolete, new safety standards are needed. Current safety guidelines are based on the obsolete hypothesis that heating is the only harmful effect of EMFs. As Markov and Grigorov have stated, today's standards do not consider the real pollution of the environment with non-ionizing radiation. 94. Hundreds of scientists, including many signatories to this appeal, have proven that many different kinds of acute and chronic illnesses and injuries are caused without heating, non-thermal effect, from radiation levels far below international guidelines. 9 Biological effects occur even at near zero power levels, effects that have been found at 0.02 picowatts, trillionths of a watt, per square centimeter or less include altered genetic structure in E. coli 95, and in rats, 96, altered egg in humans, 97, growth stimulation in plants, 98, and stimulation of ovulation in chickens. 99. To protect against non-thermal effects, duration of exposure must be considered. 5G will expose everyone to many more transmissions simultaneously and continuously, day and night without cessation. New safety standards are needed and should be based on cumulative exposure and not only on power levels but also on frequency, bandwidth, modulation, waveform, pulse width and other properties that are biologically important. Antennas must be confined to specific, publicly identified locations. To protect humans, antennas must be located far from where people live and work, and excluded from the public rights-of-way where people walk. To protect wildlife, they must be excluded from wilderness sanctuaries and strictly minimized in remote areas of the Earth. To protect all life, commercial communications satellites must be limited in number and prohibited in low and medium Earth orbits. Phased arrays must be prohibited on Earth and in space. RF radiation has both acute and chronic effects. RF radiation has both immediate and long-term effects. Cancer and heart disease are examples of long-term effects. Alteration of heart rhythm 100, and changes in brain function, EQ 101, are examples of immediate effects. A syndrome that was called radio wave sickness 102, in the former Soviet Union and is called electromagnetic hypersensitivity, EHS, around the world today 103, can be either acute or chronic. Professor Dr. Karl Hecht has published a detailed history of these syndromes, compiled from a review of more than 1,500 Russian scientific papers and the clinical histories of more than 1,000 of his own patients in Germany. Objective findings include sleep disorders, abnormal blood pressure and heart rate, digestive disorders, hair loss, tinnitus and skin rash. Subjective symptoms include dizziness, nausea, headache, memory loss, inability to concentrate, fatigue, flu-like symptoms and cardiac pain. 104. The European EMF Guideline 2016 states that EHS develops when people are continuously exposed in their daily life to increasing levels of EMFs, and that reduction and prevention of EMF exposure is necessary to restore these patients to health. 105. EHS should no longer be considered a disease, but an injury by a toxic environment that affects an increasingly large portion of the population, estimated already at 100 million people worldwide, 106-107, and that may soon affect everyone. 108, if the worldwide rollout of 5G is permitted. The International Scientific Declaration on EHS and Multiple Chemical Sensitivity, MCS, Brussels, declared in 2015 that inaction is a cost to society and is not an option anymore. WE unanimously acknowledged this serious hazard to public health, urgently requiring that major primary prevention measures are adopted and prioritized to face this worldwide pan-epidemic in perspective, emphasis added. 109. World governments are failing in their duty of care to the populations they govern in their haste to implement 5G and to encourage the unconstrained use of outer space. The European Union, United States and national governments worldwide are taking steps to ensure a barrier-free regulatory environment. 110. They are prohibiting local authorities from enforcing environmental laws. 111. And in the interest of speedy and cost-effective deployment, removing unnecessary burdens, such as local planning procedures, and the variety of specific limits on electromagnetic field, EMF, emissions and of the methods required to aggregate them. 112. Governments are also enacting laws to make wireless facilities a permitted use in all public rights of way. 113.
Your life is the most important thing, not selfless love. Second most important thing is real love, and third is the real law. So that's why it's so important to prevent the rollout and make sure that they switch to the scalar technology and healing frequencies instead of the cancer cell phone radiation, obviously used to reduce the global population to 100 million.
To date, most wireless facilities have been located on private property at some distance from homes and businesses. In order for them to be spaced less than 100 meters apart as required by 5G, however, they will now be located on the sidewalk directly in front of homes and businesses and close above the heads of pedestrians.
So these boys are not going to promise us to keep it below 0.1 microwatt per square meter, are they?
Including mothers with babies, public notice requirements and public hearings are being eliminated. Even if there were a hearing and 100 scientific experts were to testify against 5G, laws have been passed making it illegal for local authorities to take their testimony into consideration. U.S. law, for example, prohibits local governments from regulating wireless technology on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency radiation. 114. And courts have reversed regulatory decisions about cell tower placement simply because most of the public testimony was about health. 115. Insurers will not provide coverage against EMF risks. 116. And there's zero clarity as to what entity will bear legal responsibility for damage to life, limb and property arising from exposure to 5G, whether ground or space-based. 117. In the absence of an agreed comprehensive legal.
Well, if they don't want to be called boys, then these mass murderers or these super criminals that want to reduce the global population, that are obviously doing it deliberately while pretending they don't know, or pretend that there are thousands of studies but none of them have shown conclusively that there are any damaging effects to humans, animals, or nature, that type of story, basically based on zero scientific data. So that type of lie, they deliberately lie, of course, that's what they do, because they don't want to go to prison themselves.
Regime governing activities in outer space, legal liability for those activities is non-existent, despite the prospect of whole continents, the atmosphere and the oceans being put at risk by them. International agreements are being violated. Children and duty of care. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, states shall undertake to ensure the child such protection and care as is necessary for his or her well-being. Art. 3. Ensure the survival and development of the child. Art. 6. And take appropriate measures to combat disease. Taking into consideration the dangers and risks of environmental pollution. Art. 24c. The Nuremberg Code, 1947, applies to all experiments on humans, thus including the deployment of 5G with new higher RF radiation exposure that has not been pre-market tested for safety.
Oh yeah, the adrenochrome slurpers are now going to care about, what was it, the Nuremberg Code or something? Oh, sure.
The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Art. 1. Exposure to 5G will be involuntary. No experiments should be conducted where there is an a priori reason to believe that death or disabling injury will occur. Art. 5. The findings of over 10,000 scientific studies and the voices of hundreds of international organizations representing hundreds of thousands of members who have suffered disabling injury and been displaced from their homes by already existing wireless telecommunications facilities, are a priori reasons to believe that death or disabling injury will occur. Duty to inform NEMFs. The World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly, 2012, of the International Telecommunication Union, E2, stated that, here is a need to inform the public of the potential effects of exposure to electromagnetic fields, EMFs, and invited member states to adopt suitable measures in order to ensure compliance with relevant international recommendations to protect health against the adverse effect of EMF. The midterm review of the European Environment and Health Action Plan 2004 to 2010, 2008. The European Parliament notes that the limits on exposure to electromagnetic fields which have been set for the general public are obsolete. Obviously take no account of developments in information and communication technologies, of the recommendations issued by the European Environment Agency or of the stricter emission standards adopted, for example, by Belgium, Italy and Austria, and do not address the issue of vulnerable groups, such as pregnant women, newborn babies and children. Resolution 1815, Council of Europe, 2011, take all reasonable measures to reduce exposure to electromagnetic fields, especially to radio frequencies from mobile phones, and particularly the exposure to children and young people. Environment. The Declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, 1972, the discharge of toxic substances in such quantities or concentrations as to exceed the capacity of the environment to render them harmless, must be halted in order to ensure that serious or irreversible damage is not inflicted upon ecosystems. Principle 6. The World Charter for Nature, 1982, activities which are likely to cause irreversible damage to nature shall be avoided. Here potential adverse effects are not fully understood, the activities should not proceed. Art. 11. The Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, 1992, states have the responsibility to ensure that activities within their jurisdiction or control do not cause damage to the environment of other states or of areas beyond the limits of national jurisdiction. Principle 2. The United Nations World Summit on Sustainable Development, 2002, there is an urgent need to create more effective national and regional policy responses to environmental threats to human health. Para. 54K. The African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, 2017, the parties shall take all appropriate measures to prevent, mitigate and eliminate to the maximum extent possible, detrimental effects on the environment, in particular from radioactive, toxic, and other hazardous substances and wastes. Art. 13. Health and Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person. Art. 3. The United Nations Global Strategy for Women's, Children's and Adolescents' Health, 2016 to 2030, has as
So the Luciferian UN's UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR.org, is not legally binding, but the Constitution is. Would you believe it?
objectives and targets to transform, by expanding enabling environments, to survive, by reducing maternal and newborn mortality, and to thrive by ensuring health and well-being and reducing pollution-related deaths and illnesses. The Outer Space Treaty, 1967, requires that the use of outer space be conducted so as to.
So you could argue, if you said yes, you would believe it, then it's the wrong thing to do, basically, even if it's from my lips. The right thing to do would be to check it if it's something important, but many people already know that the UDHR is not legally binding, according to several renowned sources online, or whatever.
Avoid its harmful contamination and also adverse changes in the environment of the Earth. Art. 9. The United Nations Guidelines for the Long-Term Sustainability of Outer Space Activities, 2018, states and international intergovernmental organizations should address risks to people, property, public health and the environment associated with the launch, in-orbit operation and re-entry of space objects. Guidelines.
So this radiation is carcinogenic, so it's in violation of the Outer Space Treaty as well. So requires that the use of outer space be conducted, quote, so as to avoid, between brackets, its harmful contamination and also adverse changes in the environment of the Earth. Harmful contamination, that's what we're talking about here. Also space travelers that have to travel through that radiation, that get pretty close to these beams, etc. So they have to fly in between, etc. I can understand that, but if they have solar panels, they will reflect sunlight. So I might go to bed soon, but I put the links in the description also of the astronomers, etc. And there may be far better ones. This is just the first stuff that Google came up with, basically.
C. World governments are playing dice with life on Earth. Albert Einstein famously asserted that God does not play dice. 118. Yet by pursuing the broadcast on Earth and from space of 5G, an unprecedented technology of millimeter waves previously used as an energy weapon in military operations and crowd control.
So, if there is no God, Einstein was right about that. God does not play dice. And Freud was also right. Religion is an illusion. To quote Freud, religion is an abomination. I've explained it in my previous broadcast why. Not religious people, but religion in and of itself.
119. World governments are recklessly playing dice with the future of life on Earth. To refuse to accept and apply relevant and valid scientific knowledge is ethically unacceptable. Existing research shows that 5G, and especially space-based 5G, contravenes principles enshrined in a host of international agreements. We call upon the UN, WHO, EU, Council of Europe and governments of all nations, to take immediate measures to halt the deployment of 5G on Earth and in space in order to protect all humankind, especially the unborn, infants, children, adolescents and pregnant women, as well as the environment. B. to follow the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and Council of Europe Resolution 1815 by informing citizens.
Based on what I've read thus far, I think that they won't test the harmful effects of 5G. They already know them, and they're doing this deliberately. And people are being tortured with directed energy weapons if they're trying to do the right thing, in theory.
Including teachers and physicians, about the health risks to adults and children from RF radiation, and why they should and how they can avoid wireless communication and base stations, particularly in or near daycare centers, schools, hospitals, homes and workplaces. C. To favor and implement wired telecommunications instead of wireless. D. To prohibit the wireless telecommunications industry through its lobbying organizations from persuading officials to make decisions permitting further expansion of RF radiation, including ground and space-based 5G. E. To appoint immediately, without industry influence, international.
So remember to mistrust authority, because some people were murdered for questioning authority. If we do not act, we are acted upon. George Orwell.
Groups of independent, truly impartial EMF and health scientists with no conflicts of interest. 120, for the purpose of establishing new international safety standards for RF radiation that are not based only on power levels, that consider cumulative exposure, and that protect against all health and environmental effects, not just thermal effects and not just effects on humans. F. To appoint immediately, without industry influence, international groups of scientists with expertise in EMFs, health, biology and atmospheric physics, for the purpose of developing a comprehensive regulatory framework that will ensure that the uses of outer space are safe for humans and the environment, taking into account RF radiation, rocket exhaust gases, black soot, and space debris and their impacts on ozone. 121, global warming. 122, the atmosphere and the preservation of life on Earth. Not only ground-based but also space-based technology must be sustainable. 123, for adults and children, animals and plants.
They should also check the propellant of their spacecraft, if that really is chlorine-free, as they claim it is. Test the propellant, because chlorine breaks down ozone, and they may actually be trying to destroy the Earth, to destroy 7 billion people, creating floods and hurricanes, earthquakes and plagues with 5G. Because it's also heating up our atmosphere, of course. This is a load, incredible load of energy that's being poured out over us that we're irradiated to death with in reality. Okay?
Please respond to the appeal administrator listed below, detailing the measures you intend to take to protect the global population against RF radiation exposure, especially 5G radiation. This appeal and your response will be publicly available on www.5gspaceappeal.org. Respectfully submitted. Author Furstenberg, Appeal Administrator, info@5gspaceappeal.org. Initial signatories Africa Law Ain Margaret Helen Vivian, Ph.D., Anthropology and Psychiatry, Honorary Research Associate, Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, University of Copenhagen, Denmark.
Thank you for making the petition and all those who've signed it. I didn't know about its existence, but it's kind of late now, isn't it? But I thought it would be a good idea to read the appeal, because I thought it will have good points, and I think they are excellent points, especially about the harmful effects of radio frequency radiation that are already proven beyond any reasonable doubt. also with peer-reviewed scientific studies. Okay, and this links to all these studies, so you can click on each one of them, and then you get, for example, the effects of radio frequency exposure emitted from a GSM mobile phone on proliferation, differentiation, and apoptosis of neural stem cells. And basically all types of microwave radiation, cancer cell phone radiation, cause these lumping red blood cells, a test you can do at home with a microscope after 90 seconds of cancer cell phone exposure. But there are videos of it online and pictures taken through a microscope. So if you don't know how to do it safely, don't do it, just watch these videos. And so the point is that it also causes DNA breaks and chromosomal damage, etc. And it's the same for all these types of cancer cell phone radiation. A small part of the spectrum. Radio frequency radiation injures trees around mobile phone base stations. And this was a reference planetary emergency. The Earth needs your help now. So if there is any anthropogenic global warming, they do it with these ionospheric heaters using terawatts of power. Everything is energy. We are energy. So it's all about using it wisely. And I think there will be a matter generator, time traveling AI, and a matter transformer. There is time traveling AI, or at least I know with 100% certainty time travel is possible. I've been through some quite unbelievable things. I've had a partially invisible person on my parking lot, etc. And I captured it on video also. And I'm not making stuff up, I really am not. Though I think that most people wouldn't believe this. The picture was on 999 ProLogic, 999.blog2blog.nl, I think. And I think they drove in a DeLorean, believe it or not. Anyway, radiation. Oh, and then there was something with a picture that I took that had, it was at night and there was this yellow light, and on the picture it looked like the shape of one of these honeybee or real flying saucers, basically man-made saucers. Project Blue Beam, etc., fake alien invasion, covered in my previous broadcasts. So again, it's about 1,584 satellites according to, but that's the Starlink initial phase. Don't know if they've planned 22,000 satellites or something, if I read something like that, but 1,584. The amount doesn't matter because it will be beaming every inch of the Earth, basically. So even if it was only one satellite with a scalar beam, it would be beaming us all when we want to go shopping, when we have to leave our homes for some other reason, when we want to drive our cancer-causing Tachenelis car, etc. So yeah, I've covered water-powered car, telluric power, geothermal energy, much cleaner than nuclear energy, and the fact that sea energy is more efficient than wind energy, all these wind turbines to give the illusion that the government has gone green, etc. But in reality, punching holes in the Earth's ionosphere and modifying the jet stream has a much bigger influence on our climate, and also the fact that they've stopped cancer chemtrailing. That's Project Cloverleaf, the CIA's evergreen aviation, cloud seeding patents, etc. covered in my previous broadcasts, including how to prove that the cancer chemtrails, CIA cancer chemtrails in America, are not contrails, they're not condensation vapors. Because before 1998 or 1989, when Project Cloverleaf was started, there were no long white lines in the sky on pictures and video material before 98. I'm not sure if it was 1998, but I'd have to Google it if it's 1989 or 1998 when it started, Project Cloverleaf. So many projects are declassified now, and on that blog 999 Prologic you can also find all declassified programs, projects and operations. Almost PPE, but it's PPO. So, and it's allowed. Joke. Anyway, I think that nurses and doctors should have full face mask with at least a P3 filter or N95 filter. The little face caps N95 filters are giving problems. I think the person that wore it had a red nose and red around his nose, the doctor in the video. That had over 1 million views, I think, anyway. So they need good equipment, and I think these half-face masks and full-face masks, gas masks, may still be available, and then the filter can be exchanged when that is not usable anymore, when there are too many particles in the filter, too many virions or other particles. Then you can't breathe through it easily anymore, and then it's time to replace the filter. However, I found it was very rubbery, and I immunized with colloidal silver, scientifically proven to destroy SARS coronavirus. And people can read up on that. If you're in the US, thesilveredge.com. If you're in Great Britain, Pure Colloids Co. UK, Nano Silver, and keep the description on the bottle, and also use probiotics if you decide to use that stuff internally to become a silver slurper. And I hope that everybody studies it and immunizes themselves so that we're not injected mandatorily compulsory with killer vaccines. And I think that people want to reduce the global population with vaccines, healthcare, and reproductive health services with 10 to 15%, 1 billion people down, that they are insane and they are empathyless, therefore psychotic, according to many sources, also doctors and professors. And they should be arrested for advocating it. It's illegal, public, open incitement to commit genocide in the sense of the Genocide Convention, and the group they're targeting is the human race as a whole. But not just Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but also others that I've covered in the 50 shocking population reduction quotes. And it's just a theory that the judges are all totally controlled. I mean, they don't want to die in cancer cell phone radiation, and they don't want to die at all. So I wonder how they do it, if they're torturing everybody. I think they are using that Pavlovian programming to condition us. They also give a nasty feeling when we think about prepping, preparing and surviving, and a good feeling with cancer-causing killer alcohol and movies and other things that won't help us, nor our timeline, nor our fellow humans, nor the animals on our planet, nor nature, nor the rainforest, nor the seas of our planet to become cleaner. They've been attacking me. I had a headache, ringing in the head a long time, and it is very well possible they're trying to murder me. Covered in my previous broadcast about ringing in the head, not in the ears. It's not tinnitus or tinnitus. So this might not be the best link either. But this one's excellent, so I bookmarked this and download it also. And when they implement the kill switch or they do an EMP thing, 3 days of darkness or whatever, then if we have a cage of Faraday, we still have our computer and electronic equipment. News. Done. And save as PDF, then I have to be fast. Well, okay. So if it's on some porn directory, then it's not shown on the screen, but it's already in the alright directory. Then I can put it in documents, PDFs. The appeal 5G space appeal 5G space appeal.org. There you can read all the information and the scientific documents. That is what we should base our decisions on, not on wishful thinking and dogma and things that are not facts, but money talking, etc. Because our future and the future of the human race is at stake. And it's the government's job to arrest these people. It's not our job to do a citizen's arrest and all that. Or is it? I don't know, I have to check. So yeah, time travel is possible. And people don't realize how painful it is to get your teeth tortured out one by one, perhaps. Or perhaps they do realize and then they're afraid to watch my program. But if you don't say certain words that I've mentioned, for example, say Skull and Bones or Lord Rothschild or Arturo Sosa, the big shots, etc., and don't use negativity about them, basically, the F word and things, then that reduces your risk of being tortured to a great extent already. Tim Russert also mentioned Skull and Bones. He interviewed Bush and Kerry, and some believe that he was tortured to death with a heart attack weapon. And there was the student, what's his name again? They've turned it into a meme also. How we call it in time, I think. See if it's in my picture thing. I doubt it. Andrew Meyer. Perhaps it's best if I don't play the interview. Anyway, it's a video student tasered at Kerry speech longer version. And Florida University student tasered for asking John Kerry if he's a member of Skull and Bones. And another shorter one. That's the longest one. That's 174 minutes. Don't know if that's one of my own broadcasts, but I doubt it. Student tasered after John Kerry's Skull Bones questioning, and theftcountry.com MP4, that's also on YouTube. Probably President Obama tells students to reject voices warning of... Oh, okay. That's another one. Okay. Of course, I can refer to the US state-sponsored terrorism article on Wikipedia. So perhaps we should start at home when we want to create a better world for ourselves and our fellow humans, without a world war, and by preventing a world war, taking a shortcut to a perfect society. Some call it Alam Aban, on fictional utopia, paradise on earth, blah blah. And controlling all factors that control aging in time, so that we all don't die forever, which is like for trillions of years, etc. Which we're not going to notice if we're dead, and if we're resurrected after a trillion years, then we can party, etc. Blah blah, and so on and so forth. So I think I'd better call it night. Starlink. So it's not Springerlink. Okay, I'll wear my hoodie because it looks cold. It's kind of really quite warm in my room at the moment. People can join my Spherical Earth Society, my anti-global government movement, or my global government erected to prevent population reduction and imposition of a satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government after population reduction to 500 million upon the people of planet Earth. So the Jesuits are a military order, and they control the Freemasons, and all intelligence agencies are Freemasonic. Those Luciferian. People can check Citizens Action Network on Facebook, and I don't know if they're the original source who claim this, but nobody has been able to disprove it to me. So there are many people that are willing to ridicule the truth. They may be mind controlled, etc. But we should focus on the people that love us, that want to help us and do the right thing, and unite with one another, also via the internet, share important data for the struggle for creating that perfect society in which we all live happily eternally. So I think we really need resistance to people that are trying to reduce the global population, that already have done so. And Kissinger and George Soros are but a few people who are also involved in this population reduction. And then there are all these evil groups, Bilderberg, Committee of 300, Trilateral Commission is also mentioned by some, Knights of Malta, Jesuits and Masons, secret societies Kennedy warned us about. And perhaps it's best to end the show with the Kennedy quote again.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies. We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies.
How dare you!
The purpose for which this ship was built, to end for all time the scourge of warfare.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
The CDC did.
WHO.
So I won't play the Keep Bustin' sample because of copyright infringement. But those were the previous Director Generals of CDC and WHO Tom Frieden, I think, I'm not sure, and Margaret Chan. Alright, well, that's it for now. Thank you all for watching, thank you all for your likes, subscribes, and especially shares on your timeline. Perfect. And thank you all for your positive remarks and also your comments and your critique. I appreciate it. And I'm still growing. It's a pretty new channel, Perfect Society on YouTube, and my other channels are Try Something But Vegetarian and the Future channel on YouTube. And then there's universalpeace.jimdo.com. And donations are also welcome via universalpeace.jimdo.com. Perhaps I could work preserving rainforest. I think that's really cool. I'm a vegetarian trying to go vegan. Coconut ice cream is pretty expensive, but it is very good. And I think that the people working on controlling these factors that control aging should have the highest security, and they're doing the most important thing. Our common enemy is death, and this is not a game, it's reality. So that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Tune in next time on Perfect Society, and do healing stuff for universal peace. Kiss for single ladies who would like one. And au revoir, mon chéri, on Perfect Society. Peace out.